What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So this shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. And I know again, I've mentioned this in another recent video. Many people didn't necessarily like Sinners. Some people didn't think Sinners was even a horror film. I disagree with the latter. The former is, I think, open to interpretation. You don't like it, you don't like it. That's fine. We're all not going to like the same things. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it because not just because I believe it is, in fact, a horror movie. I also like time period piece films. And I do consider this to be a time period piece. Now, we've covered Sinners across multiple videos, whether that was horror news updates based on the fact that we were getting, first look images, when we were getting the synopsis of the film, and then as we started getting teasers and the trailers, we did videos on those as well. And one of the last videos I did before this hit theaters was the fact that we found out that WB, was the studio setting it up to fail because of the amount of money they had already put behind it, the budget, which I think it was around 90 million. I want to say it was 90 million. And it felt like they were pretty much saying they didn't have confidence in the film, and that there was a lot of worry that this film would not make back that. It made back that. It made that and a whole lot more. I think a lot more than anyone had expected this film to make, because it was thoroughly enjoyed by the vast majority. And when films like that happen, when things like that happen, you can expect there's going to be sequel talks. Now, this here, as you can see, that was always my intention. Ryan Coogler reveals if we'll get a Sinners sequel. So obviously now we're knowing that was his intention when he put this movie together. His intention was that he was going into it he was wanting to do a sequel. So I imagine then that's why the story played out the way it did, because again, he has in mind a sequel. And studios like WB, who are in need, in my opinion, of wins, they don't have too many wins to speak of as of late. I don't see them turning this way. Now, we know Ryan Coogler isn't going to be available to do a sequel anytime soon. He's already moving on to other projects, and we know one of those is this X-Files reboot with a little bit more horror take on it. And we've covered that off as well. Go into our horror news update playlist, and you'll find the update on that story. But I do see a sequel more than likely going to happen. So let's jump into the article details here. It's been well over a month since Ryan Coogler's original vampire horror film hit theaters, but it will go down as one of the year's most memorable movies. Not only has Sinners found tremendous success at the box office, it earned over 250 million domestically and nearly 350 million globally, but it's also been extremely well received by both critics and audiences. On the world's leading aggregate site, Rotten Tomatoes, Sinners earned a 97% from critics and 96% on the audience-driven popcorn meter. It didn't take fans long to begin speculating about the next chapter in Sinners' story could look like. Ideas were floated out for a prequel film following Smoke and Stack, who were played by Michael B. Jordan, and their work in Chicago, or even a prequel following Remick's rise to unchallenged vampiric power. There were also talks of a sequel, but this would seemingly only feature Sammy, and he's the only one to survive the onslaught. Sinners director Ryan Coogler is aware of the online chatter, and during a recent interview with Ebony Magazine, he weighed in on the chances of Sinners getting either a prequel or sequel film. All right, so let's get down to the quote. All right, here we go. I've been in a space of making franchise films for a bit, so I wanted to get away from that. I was looking forward to working on a film that felt original and personal to me and had an appetite for delivering something to audiences that was original and unique. I wanted the movie to feel like a full meal. Your appetizers, starters, entrees, and desserts. I wanted all of it there. I wanted it to be a holistic and finished thing. That was how I was asked all about it. That was always my intention. So it's interesting to read this quote, because if you actually go back and look at this up here, the headline, that was always my intention, Ryan Coogler reveals if we'll get a Sinner sequel. Reading that now, and because this is the first I'm reading through this article, a bit misleading on that. I mean, I would have read this article regardless. It's horror, it's Sinners, Ryan Coogler, what's going on. I would have gone through this article, would have done a video on this, but that's, again, having not read the article, that's not what he's saying here. He's pretty much saying here, what you got is exactly what I wanted to give you. And unless there's another quote that we haven't gotten to, and there isn't, because this down Here just goes on to talk about Warner Brothers recently announced this will be available on digital platforms, which I mentioned earlier, Tuesday the 3rd. So it's going to be coming this week. Theatrical run. Looks like it will eventually make its way. It says unclear when it will make its way to HBO Max. And then let's go back up this last paragraph below. And this here just talks about Coogler's time with the MCU, with Black Panther, things of that nature. So the bulk of this, the meat of this, is this quote, and nowhere in this quote does he mention a sequel. And how I read this quote in complete contradiction to that headline is, no. I wanted the movie to feel like a full meal. Your appetizer, starters, entrees, desserts. I want all of it there. I wanted it to be a holistic and finished thing. That was how I was asked all about. That was how I was asked all about it. That was always my intention. So we've seen sequels, and we've seen especially sequels. Prequels can always happen. I don't think you necessarily need anything to. You don't really rely on the original film or the film that you're driving the prequel off on to drive the prequel. As long as the prequel runs into that original film and makes sense, then you're good. The sequel aspect is much harder because you then have to figure out what makes sense, and does the sequel really align with the events of that original film or what it's being built off of, that foundation. And again, I see this as, hey, I made the film I wanted. I told a story I wanted. It's a beginning to end story. Walking away, have a good day, enjoy the film. I got other things to work on. That's pretty much how I'm reading this. So a very misleading article headline. Again, I would have read the article regardless, but I think for those who look at article headlines and originally grasp onto that with hopes, don't do that here, because that's not what Coogler is saying here at all. At least that is not in any way how I'm interpreting it. If you're interpreting this quote differently, let me know if you think he's pretty much saying here, yeah, I'm open to doing a sequel, or yeah, that was my intention to leave it open and do a sequel, because that's not how this reads to me at all. So so anyways, that's going to do it for this quick horror news update for Sinners, coming to digital video on demand this week. I'll be getting it because I enjoy it. I don't necessarily want to wait for the physical copy to come out, but I will be getting the physical copy when it comes out, just so I can have it as part of my collection. So we'll be watching it again this week when it drops. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Would you want to see a prequel or a sequel to Sinners, or are you good with the story that was told? Again, let me know down in the comment section. And if you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, we'll see you at the next one. Later.